This is a sikha from Chelik Aleph, Likuta Sikha is the first sikha on Parshas Toldos. Now, the beginning of our parsha begins with the words Ve'ela Toldos Yitzchak ben Avraham. There's a lot of places in the Torah when it wants to talk about the history and the events that are going to take place, or literally the Toldos, meaning the children, it will say Ve'ela Toldos. We had it in last week's parsha. We had at the end of last week's parsha Ve'ela Toldos Bnei Yishmael. What's the children and the offspring of Yishmael and so on. The beginning of our parsha, well, we got Yishmael out of the way. He's not the main character in the Torah. He's a side character. The main character is Avraham, Yitzchak, and then Yaakov, and so on. So our parsha begins with the words Ve'ela Toldos Yitzchak ben Avraham. And right afterwards it says Avraham hoiledas Yitzchak. So everybody asks, this is obvious. You just now started saying Ve'ela Toldos Yitzchak ben Avraham. If you would just said Ve'ela Toldos Yitzchak, maybe. If you would have just said Ve'ela Toldos Avraham, maybe. But it says Ve'ela Toldos Yitzchak ben Avraham, and then it says Avraham hoiledas Yitzchak. It's completely repetitive, redundant. It's not necessary. So obviously there's a deeper message, and different commentaries, everybody according to their style, explains what the point is of emphasizing this in a double way. The Kashal Akasu, Ve'ela Toldos Yitzchak ben Avraham, Avraham hoiledas Yitzchak. Danim HaMefarshim, Betam, Kfilas Haloshon Yitzchak ben Avraham, Avraham hoiledas Yitzchak, like we just now spoke about. So all the Mefarshim talk about it. Why this repetition? Ach Pirush HaDvarim hu, Shezeo Nesinas Tam Toldos Yitzchak ben Avraham, Toldos Kipshutoi V'chein Lefi Droshes Razal, Iker tel the same Tzadikim Torah Mitzvahs. One thing is, there is the literal idea of Toldos. Literal idea is children, offspring, descendants. A deeper meaning is, what's considered the children, the offspring of a tzaddik? What does he give birth to? What is he creating? He's creating his Torah that he's studying, his mitzvahs that he's doing. That's considered his offspring. In both of those, there is this Yitzchak ben Avraham, Avraham hoiledas Yitzchak. Ufshur metoich kach she'Avraham hoiledas Yitzchak. How is it possible for Yitzchak to have generations further of the Jewish people? Like we said, the point is Avraham brought about Yitzchak, and Yitzchak brought about Yaakov, and from that came the Jewish people. How is it possible to have those descendants? It's all because Avraham was responsible for Yitzchak. And also spiritually, how is it possible for Yitzchak to be able to accomplish and grow spiritually in his Torah, in his performance of mitzvahs? It wasn't Yitzchak by his own power. He was empowered by Avraham Avinu. What Avraham was hoiledas Yitzchak, that enabled Toldos Yitzchak ben Avraham. As he's going to explain, what was it that Avraham empowered Yitzchak with to be able to have Yitzchak be creative and empower further generations? In Yanim Siyamim, Haisat Chilasam be Yitzchak. There are certain things that start off with Yitzchak. Umehem Nimal Ishmaina. He was the first person that was ever had a bris at 8 days old. Shazu Shlitas Shleimusei Shal Inyan Hamila. The perfect observance of the mitzvah of Milah is at 8 days old. Avraham Avinu did the bris Milah when he was 99. His older son Yishmael was 13 years old when he had the bris Milah. But the ideal age, as we'll soon explain why, for a bris is, as we know, for all generations, when ideally are you supposed to have a bris? At 8 days old. Another thing that Yitzchak had, V'chein bar mitzvah liyud gimel shana, it's brought down that Yitzchak was the first one that actually at 13 became bar mitzvah. Now we contrast these two things with Avraham. Avraham Nimal Tzadik Teshani was 99 years old. Kain loy hoy Avraham bar mitzvah yud gimel shana. He didn't become bar mitzvah at 13. Legabe didoi kayom es deis chelukis ben sholosh hikar Avraham es boirei ben arboim ben memhei avoloi ben ches avoloi ben yud gimel. That by Avraham Avinu there's different opinions when he intellectually recognized or began to recognize God. But it's nothing about the number 13, nothing about 13 years old with Avraham Avinu. Yitzchak was the first Jew that had a bar mitzvah at 13. Shnei ha'inyanim, both about the bris milah to 8 days and 13 years old being bar mitzvah, remuzim bepasuk vayigdal hayelad vayigamal vayas Avraham mishta gadol b'yoyim higamal es Yitzchak. In the simple sense, the simple literal explanation of the pasuk, where it talks about vayigamal and higamal, it's talking about weaning. When a child stops nursing, that is what the simple meaning of vayigamal means. But the Chazal go into a deeper meaning of what higamal means. She'olav dar sherazal l'deya achas shezehaya kishemalu es Yitzchak. It was actually a party to celebrate when Yitzchak had his bris. Lefi haramez ataman b'mils higamol hey gimel mol hey gimel gematria shmoina. So it says biyoim higamel es Yitzchak. He was 8 days old when he was mal. Hey gimel mal. Keloimar mol shmoina. L'deya shnia. So that's one opinion what this party was that Avraham celebrated. Another opinion is Shemashmos divayigamal hi nigmal miyetzahara liyetzer toiv. He was weaned. Weaned means separated, but usually it means weaning from nursing, from separating from his mother. Here it means he was weaned from his yetzahara to his yetzer toiv. We know that when a person becomes 13, the yetzer toiv, the good inclination, his nefesh alakis, enters him. So he was now weaned from his Yetzirah. He was nigmal from his Yetzirah to his Yetzirah. So there are two opinions about the party and the celebration that Avraham Avinu made at that time. Now there's another thing that the different Mamor Chazal speak about, that it says that Avraham Avinu made a Mishta Gadol. What's the idea of a Mishta Gadol? When the Torah says that was something great, there must be something different. He could have just said, he made a party, Vayas Mishta. What's the emphasis on the word Gadol? From the word Gadol, something great, must be something out of the ordinary, something significant. But moving on, Mishta Gadol, Namar Medrash, one explanation is Aleph, Gedoil Olamim, which goes HaKadosh Baruch Hu on Hashem, Hayasham. Hashem himself was present. That's why it's called Mishta Gadol. Kedugmas drashis razal akosav b'ni ato ani hayom li'ticha sha'akavana liyom habar mitzvah shel David. Hashem addressed David HaMelech, and he said on his day of his bar mitzvah, my son, I gave birth to you today, meaning I made you today bar mitzvah. Ani v'loy sitra achra, I, and not from the other side, not from the side having to do with the Yetzirah, like we said before about Yitzchak being Vayigamal miyetzahara liyetzotoiv. Kemada hava hadhashta kfi shaya adata. V'hareza nigbal miyetzahara liyetzotoiv. It's the same idea that by David HaMelech as well, when he left his Yetzirah behind, when he had his Yetzirah come in at his bar mitzvah, Hashem participated in that meal. So that's why by Yitzchak it's called, that meal that Avraham Avinu made is called Mishta Gadol, because the great one, being Hashem, participated. Another explanation by why it's called Mishta Gadol, Mishta Gedolim, great ones of the generation. Oig Melech HaBashan v'chol Gedoli HaDoir Hayusham. We know that Avraham Avinu was considered a very important person. In Parshas Chayesara, the beginning of the Parsha, it says that Ephraim told Avraham, Nisi Alekim Ata B'Seicheinu. You are a leader. He was a very important person, Avraham Avinu. He was considered someone that was given respect by all the nations. So therefore, when he made a party celebrating his son, so all these great people, including Og Melech HaBashan, was there. He's min Avraham lemishta she'arach es kol hamalachim v'oig b'soicham. He invited all the important people. Super b'medrash she'oig amar b'liboy eize erech yesh loy. Og Melech HaBashan said, I can Og was a giant, and he said, I can kem tzarayim mit zwei finger, I could just turn him into dust with two of my fingers, I could totally destroy him. Yecholni be'etzboi lasis b'no yechide shel Avraham Yitzchak la'ayin ve'efes. Amar la'akadosh baruch hu, so Hashem said to him, or said about Og, Chayecha, I swear, Shetira elef alafim v'ribi revavis mebanav v'soif chalipol b'yadam. You'll see thousands and tens of thousands of his children when they left Mitzrayim and they went to conquer Sichon, and Og Melech HaBashan was there. He was killed by the Jews. So initially, Og Melech HaBashan thought that he could make nothing out of Yitzchak, and in the end, Yitzchak's descendants totally destroyed Og. Hezber, my lois of Elu shel Yitzchaku. Well, we spoke about the two unique things about Yitzchak. That he was the first person to have a bris milah at 8 days old, and he was the first person to have a bar mitzvah at 13. Hayisrin shebenima l'shmeinahu. What's the advantage with that? Hahiskashrus im hakadosh baruch hu shelamayla metam v'das. Top of the next page, 40. Bris means a covenant, a treaty, a bond. It's an agreement, and it's something that when you make an alliance, even in modern Hebrew, right? You talk an alliance between nations, you use a term Brit, no? David, modern Hebrew? Yeah. So it means a bond that every Jew makes with Hashem. But when does he make it? Not when he's in a logical state of mind, but when he's 8 days old, before he's even been able to make an intelligent choice. Avraham nimel ben tzadik tashana b'yosei gadol ba'asaga k'fi Aram is gam b'shmoi Avraham seichel an elam kol rayon k'muzber b'sifrei Kabbalah v'chasidus. Avraham, who had a bris at 99, he was very intellectual. His name, before it was changed to Avraham, was Avram. Av, in Chassidus explained, goes on the level of Chachma, on wisdom, because Chachma Bina give birth to the emotions, so they're considered father and mother, like we have at the beginning of Tanya. His intellect was exalted. Av was in a level of Roimans, very exalted, very high intellect. So he was a very intellectual, deep-minded person, and with his deep mind, that was where his commitment to Hashem was. That's when he made the bris, at 99. Here the bond is something that surpasses and transcends intellect. And this is really very important. A lot of times I'll hear from people saying, I'm going to let my kids do what they want as far as religion and God, and when they're older, they'll figure it out for themselves. That's not what a Jew is. A Jew has a super rational connection with God, a connection beyond reason. That our connection begins before we can logically make a choice. When we're 8 days old, we're already marked and connected with Hashem. Kesher zeh ein nevei masag sichlis kiim bedugmas tinek hamargish beaviv ve'imay v'nimshach aleihem. When a child is drawn to their parents, it's not because they make a decision. They think, my parents do such great things for me. An adult child sees how wonderful his parents were, and because of that, he has a connection with his parents. A baby doesn't know why, doesn't know for what reason, but they have a natural attraction and being drawn to their parents. That same idea is the concept of making a bris at 8 days old, because the connection of a Jew with Hashem goes beyond logic, beyond the type of connection of an adult child with their parents. It's like the attraction that's beyond intellect that even a small child has, even a baby. Dalet, yeshnam chkira besfarim, im mitzvahs milah hi mitzvah, b'shaita bolvad, oishi mitzvah sheyesh la hemshech tmidi. There's an interesting discussion. This is something that is discussed in halacha. Is certain mitzvahs, you do it for one time. Certain mitzvahs are ongoing. So let's say a person that puts on tefillin. They put on tefillin. At the moment they're putting on tefillin, they're fulfilling a mitzvah. But as long as they are wearing the tefillin, they also have the mitzvah. Other mitzvahs are just the moment that they're doing it. There's nothing of it afterwards. You blow the shofar. After you finish blowing the shofar or hearing the blowing of the shofar, the mitzvah is over. You've done the mitzvah, it's gone. About the bris milah, in a little bit, some ways you could say it's like shofar. You did it once, the moil did the bris, and then it's over. Or are you going to say it's like tefillin, for example? I have the bris constantly on me. It's like wearing the tefillin on me the whole time. It's actually, there is an association. They are both called a sign. The tefillin is called a sign. The bris is called a sign of the connection between Jews and Hashem. And Shabbos is called a sign. And we know that in Yiddishkeit, for anything to be proven, you need to have two witnesses. So a Jew always needs to have two signs of his connection to Hashem. What does he have? On a daily basis, he has the bris milah and he puts on tefillin. Shabbos, which is also called a sign, ki oisi beini ubein bnei Yisrael, we don't wear tefillin. We don't need a sign because then we have the sign of Shabbos and bris milah. We have two signs. We don't need the sign of tefillin. But we see again this concept that there is a type of ongoing aspect to the mitzvah of milah. It's not just a one-time event that happened to me 62 years ago when I was 8 days old. It's an ongoing mitzvah. Sipur HaGemara, B'shah shenichnus David lebeis hamerchetz v'ra atzmei arum cholu b'loy mitzvahs. He was sad. David HaMelech looked around and said, how could I be a moment without a mitzvah? And then, v'kivin sheniskar b'milah shebevsarim nisyash v'daitei mishamesh haichacha she mitzvah nimshechas tamid. The fact that David HaMelech was comforted by the fact, yes, I do have a mitzvah even when I'm in the bathhouse, that because he reminded himself that he has the bris milah, that shows us that the mitzvah of milah is not just a one-time event, it's an ongoing mitzvah as well. What does that mean for us? So the mitzvah milah is an ongoing event. That means also our bond to Hashem is something that's ongoing and in the same manner like it was when we were 8 days old. המשמעות לגבי עבודת השם היא שאף לאחר כך בהיותו האדם בעל הבנה והשגה שכלית נדרשת ממנו ונשארת בו ההתקשרות והבריס עם הקדוש ברוך הוא כדרך שהייתה בשעה שנימל לשמונה ההתקשרות למעלה מטעם בדעת. What we learn from this is that this super rational connection that we had with Hashem at 8 days old is an ongoing event. And it's something we need to live with now as well. It's not just then. Then I didn't have the mind to be able to make a choice. Even now, when I'm an adult, and I do have a mind to make a choice, the foundation of my belief, the foundation of my connection with Hashem is super rational, the bris milah that I had when it was in a state that my mind wasn't involved. And that's what it means that bris milah is ongoing. That experience of the super rational bond with Hashem is always there. Ki kasher is kashrus tluyom semes la'kara sichlis chala la'hakbol. Im ha'kari shchitchis v'gam himum mamika yoyser mugbelasi. By the very nature of intellect, whether my intellectual understanding is superficial, or if my understanding is a much deeper understanding, but the very nature of intellect, of the mind, is limited. That would mean that if my commitment to Hashem, if my bond with Hashem is based only on the intellect, then it's a limited bond. It's not a full and complete devotion. L'kach nidrish ha'adam, afshu bar seichel, liskasher im Hashem b'mesiris nefesh v'kabolas oil shalom mailim etam v'das. He needs to be totally devoted, completely accept Hashem in such a way that's beyond reason. Then the connection is completely without any type of conditions, without any types of limitations. He's always connected. Now we're going to go on back to the idea of the party. B'shah she'arach Avraham es ha'mishta, b'yoyim higamelas Yitzchak, l'chvoid hiskashrusei shel Yitzchak ma'kadosh Baruch Hu, im shel bris oilam b'mila v'im shel aniyayim l'tichel bar mitzvah. When Avraham Avinu made this party, if you're going to say it was on the date of the bris milah, which was the everlasting covenant and bond of the bris, or it was the connection of bar mitzvah, hari avshel oig malchabashon loagla beliboy v'hisyamer levatla b'koichoy b'gvarosay oig malchabashon, symbolic of everything around us, made fun of it, said, what is this connection going to help? Whether it's the connection, the rational connection, or the super rational connection, the connection of the bar mitzvah, the connection of the bris milah, Oig make fun of it. Oig said, I can get rid of this easily. It's like the nations of the world, but the Jewish people, as we'll see. They've thought for 3,000 years they'd be able to tear us away from our commitment. If we think about it historically, every single one, we are the results of an unbelievable line. I think I mentioned this by a previous year. An unbelievable line of commitment of people before us. For 3,000 years, there had to be my father, his father, my mother, her mother, their grandparents, their great-grandparents, they all had to be committed to God, to Torah mitzvahs, or else I wouldn't have been Jewish now. The only reason why there's a Jew at the end of 3,000 years of history is because of the commitment of all these people. We think about it, all the blood, sweat, and tears that they invested and that they went through, and the challenges that we know historically Jews went through, and the persecutions and the pogroms. Even today. It's not far. But if you think about it, how many generations were committed for me to be born today a Jew? For me to be born in this generation a Jew? How hundreds of generations, hundreds of people, thousands of people had to commit themselves and had to withstand often the most terrible trials and tribulations to be able to ensure that I'm here as a Jew now. So, despite the fact that Oig Melech HaBashan and his ilk wanted to do away with us. Loi belvad shadavar loi hevi l'rifyon yadam kim adrab. Yoim higamel es Yitzchak nechgag b'shmishte gadol. V'yesr al kein. Mapolasi shaloi gechela oz. B'diburi shal HaKadosh Baruch Hu shechashev maisa. Nemer loi as sheyipol b'dei yoytze chalotzav shel Yitzchak. There is an expression, the Chazal say, that Hashem's speech is considered like action. As soon as he says something, it's done. Like, for example, it says by Avraham Avinu, L'zaracha nasati es haaretz hazois. To your children I have given this land. Nobody settled the land yet, but it said nasati in the past tense. Why does it say nasati in the past tense? Because diburei shal kadosh baruch hu chashav ma'isa. Hashem's speech is as if it's done, because nobody can stop him. When I say something, there's no guarantee that it's going to happen. First of all, there could be conditions beyond my control that something won't that something's not going to happen. Hashem, there's nothing that can be beyond His control. Another thing is that when I say something, maybe I'm not totally committed to what I'm saying, and today I'm going to say this, but tomorrow I end up doing something else. Hashem is totally emes. His name is emes. He's completely truthful, and if He says it's going to be, it's as if it happened. So as soon as Hashem said that Oig Melech HaBashan is going to be destroyed by the offspring of Yitzchak, so his destruction began at that party already. At the party of the 8-day-old party of Yitzchak, or the bar mitzvah party of Yitzchak, the bris of Yitzchak, or the bar mitzvah of Yitzchak, all those naysayers, all those that want to destroy the Jewish people, was already promised their own destruction instead. Vav. Nemar loy as she yipol b'dei yotzei chalotzav shel Yitzchak. Zayis meres ve'es zois merames u'mevayer aposik. I have shores shel toldos Yitzchak nigerama metoich kach she'Avraham hoiludas Yitzchak. Now we're going to get to the point that we started saying at the beginning of the Sikha. All of this power that Yitzchak had is all thanks to Avraham being hoiled as Yitzchak. Hein kipshutam shel dvarim ve'hein lefi biuram she'Avraham garam liYitzchak shel lahoiled. Inyan shel Avraham lefi ha'mesuper b'Torah haya she'af she'echad haya Avraham ivri boided v'yachid ba'olam kulay. Kol ha'olam haya me'ever mezeh v'Avraham me'ever mezeh. The Chazal say, why was Avraham called Avraham Ivri? Ivri could mean the other side, that Avraham was on this side and the entire world was on the other side. Avraham was the only one that believed in Hashem Echad. So even though he was the only one, you would think he was one crazy guy, one guy that everybody looked at as completely off the beaten path. And yet, still in all, Lamroizois, Vayikra Sham B'Shem Avaya Keil Olam, who piercing B'chol Mokim Sha'Hashem Keil Olam V'loi Keil Ha'Olam, Sha'Olam Hu Metzias La'atzmai V'Lakus Inyan La'atzmai. If it would have said Keil Ha'Olam, that means that there are two separate things. There's God and there's the world. Avraham Avinu did not say that. It says Vayikra Sham B'Shem Avaya Keil Olam without a hey separating and say Keil Ha'Olam. That means to say that Hashem and the world are not inseparable. V'rak she'Hashem hu Adon Olam. That's what they were going to accept. They were willing to accept that Hashem is not involved in the world. He's just the ruler of the world. He's on top of the world. He's the Adon Olam. Ki im Avraham hikri as a yediyah shemitzias ha'olam atzmai but noitzra. The entire very existence of the world comes from Hashem's very essence. Like we said before, Avraham hoiled as Yitzchak. What Avraham stood for, he created and transmitted in Yitzchak. Hichshiras hakarka letoldos Yitzchak. Torah, mitzvahs, ma'asim tovim, which we said, one of the explanation, what does the word toldos mean? What's the toldos shel tzadikim? Mitzvahs and ma'asim tovim. V'letoldos kipshutei shetzatzav kayamim v'nitzavim la'olam v'oid neifel b'yadam. So Avram's commitment that he transmitted it, Avram hoiludus Yitzchak, ensured that Yitzchak and his children went on. That Yitzchak went on with Torah mitzvahs, and his children went on with Torah mitzvahs. And not only that, but that our enemies are going to be defeated by us instead of what they thought that they'd be able to destroy us. Derech Hagav, I was teaching an interesting Sikha from the Var Malchus from Tavshin Lamed Aleph from the 1973 era, this time of year, 1973, after the Yom Kippur War. I don't remember exactly when the Yom Kippur War ended, but also there's a letter of the Rebbe from Tesayin Cheshvan where the Rebbe addresses the miracles that took place even during the Yom Kippur War. But maybe I'll get to it after we finish the Sikha. Hayros hadvarim lechol ben Yisraeli. From all of this we derive Kisha Adam is bainam matzava hu nimtza ba'olam. Shemaisav kashim v'roim v'arashayim gavrim ba'y. We look around the world. The world is a horrible world. The world is a terrible world. We see all the anti-Semites around us. We see all of those that are trying to tear us away from Hashem or just kill us. He also looks about his own life. Where is my own life in regards to being involved in Torah mitzvahs? Ketoykep v'rosei shel oigel gabetinik ben shmoina v'af yoyser amanu v'grui mehem ha'alamas v'asterim shemechutz aloi came benegel l'matzavi shel klal Yisrael arei atam amat mechol ha'amim. So a person can look at themselves personally, spiritually, that the majority of my time I'm involved in things that could pull me away from Hashem. I'm involved in things that could threaten my connection to Hashem. Just like in the big picture, there's the Jewish people as Atam Amat Mechol Ha'amim, the fewest that the nations want to destroy us. And we are as threatened by everything around us, spiritually and materially, in a similar vein, and even more than an 8-day-old child would be threatened by the giant oak. ובשושו הויסק בנייני קדושה ואומה גם שאורך משתה גודל ורואו כל עמי אורץ כשם השם נקרא לך מפיעים כאלו מפחידים אויסי באמרם שהוא עלול להיכחד ולהיסק עין ואפס. He is making a great party. He is proud of his Yiddishkeit. He is celebrating his bris. He is celebrating his bar mitzvah. And at that celebration, comes an anti-Semite and says, all of this is nothing. I'm celebrating my Yiddishkeit. How can you go ahead and say this? So he says, Alula eifoi lahatzik la'amachshava meheichin yishav koyach l'kiyam toira mitzvahs ma'asim toivim halalu nidrashim Harei memenu loibi amikipurim betfilas ne'ilah velvad ki im b'chol hashana v'ketzad yamod mul halamas v'asteirim. How is it possible, not just by Yom Kippur, by Ne'ilah, okay, by Yom Kippur, during the highest time of the day, Ne'ilah, we feel very inspired. But how, when we're surrounded by the world around us, and we're surrounded by all the challenges of the secular world, by those that want to kill us or those that want to rob us of our Yiddishkeit, how can we overcome this? We're just a small person in regards to all that's going on around us. It's a signpost and it empowers us. What took place with Avraham and Yitzchak empowers us. Avraham hoiledes Yitzchak. Every Jew stems and is coming out of Avraham. Aviyam shakol Yisrael shaloi nirtav ne'olam kuloi v'hichris ke'loilam. He wasn't afraid of anyone. Ha'olam u'alakus, he proclaimed. Ein oid malvadoi. Uketotzah mekach, because he proclaimed how the entire world is godly.